So I learned very early on that relationships are like prison.
Right,
So
right.
I wanted to, commitment, I ran from commitment my whole life. I met someone who had an opposite attachment style where whenever things get a little bit rocky, she wants to like latch on, in a sense. Like she really wants to make sure that she's got my attention.
Yeah.
For example, I could come home and say one word that shows that I'm focused on my work, and then suddenly she's like fighting for my attention. That makes me want to run, and that makes her want to chase.
Right, right.
And
right.
so then she'll get triggered, and then she'll kind of retreat and be, it's quote unquote, like the word sulking is often used.
Yeah.
So we came up with a system where I said to her, when you feel triggered by me not giving you the attention you want and you end up spiraling, can you just try and tell me as soon as possible?
Yeah.
Instead of like the 7-hour silence.
Yeah.
So that was the mechanism we came up with. And then the first time she did that, I was, as you said, very conscious of making sure I didn't react badly to it or get triggered by it.
Right.
So you're describing the process I've been through entirely.
Yeah, well, this happens to everyone. And those sulks, let's say, that's a nonverbal threat response.
Right.
Right. And you want to replace that with a more differentiated, practical, and more immediate strategy. And so, one of the things that I've seen, for example, with my wife is that the periods of time where she gets upset shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, because she can get from the problem to the verbalizable statement of the problem and the solution way, way faster. But that takes just from continual practice, because continual attention. It's like, oh, I'm upset. Okay, well, what am I upset about? Here's a bunch of things that I might be upset about. Okay, which of those are focal? Like, this is something you can learn, but you have to admit you're upset. And you also have to understand that you don't know why. Because one of the things that'll happen in a marriage with any close relationship, with any relationship, is like, well, if you and I talk and we hit a pit, I would rather that it's your fault, right? Because then you have to take the conceptual structure and you have to allow it to die and you have to cry and you have something to learn, and it's you, and it's an indication that you're insufficient. It's way more convenient for me if it's you. Plus, I get to feel moral superior and like I have myself under control and that I've mastered the universe. And also, women also in some ways want that from men because they want the men to be competent. And so men will pretend to be more competent than they are. It's like, you want to find out what the problem is because then you can solve it. And one of the things you have to consider is that you're the problem. Maybe you're not, but maybe you are. Now you might say, well, why should you undergo the cataclysmic revelation that you're the problem? And the answer is because you could stop being the problem. Like, that's the payoff. Because you might say, well, why attend to your wife? Why fight? And the answer is so you don't have to fight again. See, and I know this. So I'm a very agreeable person. I don't like conflict. Like, I'll do almost anything not to paper it over, though. That's the thing, to fix it. But the reason that I'll engage in conflict is because I know, it isn't a theory. I know that conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. And so if I do have a problem with someone, I want to note it, get it on the table, fight it through to the bloody bottom, fix it, and move on. And there's that's a lot of emotional stress and complex reconceptualization and retooling. And people would rather avoid that, because, you come home from work and your mind is on something, whatever the hell it is. And then this like snake pops up and you think, do we really have to deal with this now? It's like, well, maybe. And if not now, when? And that's something you can also negotiate, like I can give you an example of that. So there was a time, a very long time, where my daughter was insanely ill and suffering brutally and deteriorating at the same time. And that's overwhelming by definition, because a problem you can't solve is overwhelming. And then so the question arises, well, how do you deal with a problem that's overwhelming that you can't solve without making it worse? So one of the things that Tammy and I did was we made rules. It's like, we didn't talk about Michaela after 8 o'clock at night. It was just off the table, because we knew, well, are you going to go to sleep? Are you going to need some sleep tonight? Like, if we're going to battle this for like decades, we better not wear ourselves out. Okay, how not to? Well, Let's make some rules. They're like negotiating rules. And you can do this. This is good advice to the degree you can give people advice about a relationship. Here's something to understand about your marriage, okay? You are going to have to listen to your wife 90 minutes a week, okay? And you might as well just get that through your thick skull. Now, why?